Hi, so I'm hoping I can get this out in 5 minutes or less because I do not want to make 20-minute videos just to get to the point. So I'm just going to cover some of the weird, less common symptoms that I experienced. So the typical headaches, heart palpitations, heart pounding, heart racing, sometimes sensations in the left side of your arm, um, a lot of muscle tension. I experienced all of that. Chest tightness, all of that. Shortness of breath. So those were the main things that I went through maybe the first month and a half, daily. And when I say daily, I mean I didn't get a break. Like if I got a break from the chest tightness, then the heart racing was happening. It literally would just go through like this cycle of different symptoms, and I was just in a constant state of just like stress and suffering basically. But a few months into the anxiety, so it started in March 2019, I would say maybe 4 months in, I started experiencing various symptoms that did not seem anxiety related at all. And they stressed me out and they scared me half to death. For instance, I started feeling like this creepy crawling sensation at the base of my neck, and it would go all the way up to the front of my scalp, and it would just continue to do that. It didn't hurt, there was no pain involved. It just felt very unnatural, and for some reason, I feared that it was going to like lead to a stroke or something like that. I don't even know what the symptoms of a stroke are, but that's what my brain was thinking at the time. So that was one weird thing. Another weird thing is I had light sensitivity. So I've always worked in like an office environment, and it's never bothered me before, but all of a sudden the fluorescent lights, I can hardly stand them. So I'm turning down the lights on my computer monitor. I'm trying to like shield my eyes from the fluorescent lighting in the ceiling. Having to wear sunglasses where I don't normally have to do that. And so it was just very strange. Like my eyes just could not tolerate the brightness for a spell. And so I actually went and got my eyes checked just to make sure there was nothing else going on, because the light sensitivity was just one of two eye-related anxiety symptoms that I felt. So I felt light sensitivity, and then I also felt eye tension, like in the actual muscles behind my eyeballs. So it's hard to explain that, but basically the muscles behind my eyes felt like super tight like this all the time. And the only thing that would actually relieve them is if I close my eyes for a long time, or if I put like ice, like an ice pack or something over my eyes for a bit, just to kind of like relax those muscles. And when I went to the optometrist, there was nothing wrong with my eyes. There was nothing wrong with my vision. It was just another manifestation of the anxiety. Another thing I felt was just change in body temperature. So I could be in an environment where it's freezing cold outside, but if I was inside with a lot of people, I would get crazy hot. And it's not the same as if you're outside and the sun is beating down on you. It was more of like an internal heat. And that happened only with a lot of people for some reason. It didn't really matter if I was by myself, like if I was just in our bedroom by myself and closed the door, but if there were a lot of people inside, regardless of how cool it was inside, I would start getting very, very hot. I also experienced claustrophobia, which was never an issue for me. I was the girl back in the day who wanted to go to all the crowded clubs and the crowded parties because, it's not fun, it's not popping if there's not people in there and it's not packed to the limit. And once I started struggling with anxiety, I was like, if there's anybody within 6 feet, just like the COVID thing, anybody within 6 feet, it's not going to work. So it's just like, it's so strange how like all these little symptoms, all the same source was the anxiety that I was experiencing. Another thing I felt was just like a lot of just tingling and just weird shooting sensations on just my left side of my body, which for whatever reason, it always manifests like just on the left side, which is worrisome because I was like, okay, this is the side with, where my heart is, and there's arteries over here, so maybe there's like a blood clot, or maybe there's something going on with my, how your mind is when you're highly anxious and fearful, you go down that rabbit hole, and that's what I was thinking. But then again, I went to the doctor, had a lot of tests done, nothing was wrong. Started doing research and talking to other friends who deal with anxiety, and I actually have a friend, she will get numbness in her face, which is even worse because that sounds like a stroke, does it not? But again, for me, anxiety manifests physically in a lot of ways, and so it affects my muscles, and you pretty much have muscles everywhere. So if it's affecting your nervous system and your muscles, then almost any sensation could be attributed to anxiety. That's why it's so difficult to deal with, because you have legitimate fears, because these symptoms keep changing. It's not always the same. It's not always heart palpitations. It's not always, muscle tension and headaches and things like that. And I will say something else that I noticed through all these random sensations, palpitations, heat, sensitivity to heat, light sensitivity, chest tightness, this crawling scalp, the shooting pain. I also had like burning in my muscles, like just on this one side, like it's always in like the bicep area. Super bad tension headaches and tightness in my neck and shoulders, and sometimes like in the back right here, some tightness back there, so I'd have knots. One thing I've noticed in my own personal experience is that once I know for a fact that it is indeed anxiety and it's not attributed to anything else, I lose the fear of it, because at that point I understand, okay, Angela, you're okay. You're not about to die. This is just your body responding to all the hormones and the stress hormones and cortisol being like pumped through your veins, and your body thinks that something's wrong, but it's not actually anything wrong with you. And so when you realize that all the things that you're feeling in your eye muscles, in your neck, in your heart, in your, like, just everywhere, you realize it's all anxiety. That's the source of everything. At that point, at least for me, I lost the fear of it. And so as soon as I lost the fear, I never had those symptoms again. They didn't come back. And if they did, they were minor. They didn't last that long, because I just kind of was like, oh yeah, it's just anxiety. And I just kept doing whatever I was doing. It really does seem like you have to trick your body. You have to fight against the inclination to be fearful of it, because the fear is what drives the anxiety. You just keep on having symptoms. And I will tell you this though, as soon as I lost the fear of one symptom, there would be something else that would pop up. It's like literally your body is like fighting against you, trying to find ways to scare you half to death. And so I've literally experienced like some sort of form of anxiety in every single part of my body at some point. And so I wanted to share this just so that you wouldn't be scared, so that you weren't the only one that's felt these things before, but also just to encourage you that if you have these things, if you're like me, it helps settle you when you go to a doctor, just to make sure everything's fine. And then when you have those symptoms again, you know what it is, you don't fear it, and then they stop. That's been my experience. And so I would just say, you're not alone. There's a lot more people who suffer with this than you realize. I did not know when I started suffering with anxiety how many people I know who have it and who have had it for years. And I have a pretty mild case. When I talk to people, like it felt severe at the time, but when I talk to people who've had it, since they were teenagers, I really can't complain, because it's not something that interrupts my everyday life. Now, it did in the beginning. Literally for 6 weeks, I could not do hardly anything. I couldn't breathe for like hours at a time, or at least I felt like I couldn't breathe. Couldn't fully inhale and things like that. But this is all just to say that it can affect every part of your body. It's okay to go to the doctor multiple times to get the peace of mind that you need. And there is a light at the end of the tunnel. I think that's the thing for me. I always just kind of jump to the extremes, and I'm just like, is this going to be how it's going to be for me for the rest of my life? Like, life is always going to be stressful, and is my body always going to respond this way? And I think thinking like that is not healthy. I understand it, because that's how my mind naturally is wired, but I have to fight against that, because you really have to take this one moment at a time so that you don't work yourself up. But there is light at the end of the tunnel. And I did find ways to manage my anxiety, and honestly almost eliminate it 100%. I rarely struggle with anxiety symptoms, especially the physical ones, the way I did a year ago. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and I hope to show some of the things that I've used. Like, I'm all into the holistic way, vitamins, herbs, essential oils, massages, things like that, that really just was, all of those things were very pivotal in me getting to where I am now, which is where I very rarely have any sort of physical manifestation of anxiety. So I'm hoping I can share those with you sooner rather than later. But I did want to just talk about the crazy symptoms that we experience, because there's just no telling like what you might be feeling like. So that's all. I just want to share that with you guys, and hopefully that was helpful and helped you feel like you're not crazy. You're not alone. What you're feeling is not that rare. There's millions of people who suffer with anxiety, and it manifests in multiple ways. So I can't wait to share some of the tips. I want to hear if y'all have any extra tips that I'm not aware of, because I'm always open to learning new ways to be holistic and manage stress and all this sort of stuff. So I will be in touch soon with some helpful tips, and that's all I have for now. Peace out, homies.